Hi everyone, welcome to this session. So today we are going to be talking about Microsoft Azure and opportunities available to us in the tech space. So She Code Africa Nairobi is a community that strives to empower women in terms of mentoring, networking, sessions like this, and it also provides various resources. We have a Telegram group and also a Signal group. We also have a Slack global group that I'll be sharing the links in the chat briefly. And today I have Stephanie and Lawrence. So Stephanie is part of the She Code Africa Nairobi team. And Lawrence is our speaker. So Lawrence is the developer audience lead in Africa at Microsoft. So he specializes in developing and nurturing and growing the Microsoft developer ecosystem across the African continent. So he will be telling us more about himself as we go on. But I hope you're as excited as we are for this particular session. Thank you, Stephanie and Lawrence, for showing up in time and for starting this session well. So welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you. As you've all heard, my name is Lawrence, and I look after the developer ecosystem across most of Africa. And a lot of my work is based around helping communities grow and build, and also engaging some of our developers within our customers as well, because we'd also like them to get deeper skills. In fact, you'll hear me use the word skills. We should have a skill counter thing. Every time I use the word skill, we should just keep raising it, because I'm going to completely terrorize the word today. And that's why we're here, right? At the end of the day, we're here to gain skills. We're here to grow, build our knowledge, try new things, and also expose you to new technologies, new ways of thinking, talk a bit about the opportunities in tech. But most of all, I'd like to also have a discussion around everything, right? So here's how today's session is going to go. I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes talking a bit about Azure and what Microsoft is doing within the cloud ecosystem. Maybe a small demo if the demo gods allow me, if my technology doesn't crash. And then I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about opportunities in tech, like where once you have the skills, where do you go in the tech space? And what can you do? How do you figure out your path? That's going to be more of a discussion. I'd like to also hear from you there. And the last 30 minutes are going to be Q&A. So I want to leave a lot of time for your questions. And if at any point you do have a question, drop it in chat. Velda and Stephanie are going to raise it with me on this end, and I will answer it. Yes. There they are. See, they magically appear whenever you guys have questions. So please keep your questions coming. Okay, with that, we can begin. Velda, Stephanie, do I have the green light?
So yeah,
Okay, good. Let's start. So
sure.
I am going to share my screen. Sorry about that. Here we go. And yes, so you'll see me look over here and you'll see me look over there. Those are two screens. I don't have names for them, sorry. I think we should name them now. That's Legolas, that's Gimli, and this main one is Aragorn. Yes, I did watch a little too much Lord of the Rings, and I love it. It's amazing. So that's me, Lawrence. I look after the developer ecosystem. I think we've already mentioned that. This talk is not about me. I'm definitely not diving into that. I want us to talk about the most important people in the room. That's you, developers. And developers come in many shapes and forms, building many things. But I'll start today's session, as I mentioned, with cloud developers, people who are building websites, people who are building IoT systems, people who are trying their hand at AI, people who are just literally going out there and just bringing all these bits and pieces together. And you'll see a few buzzwords in here. I'm not a big fan of buzzwords, but we do like to try and put our mission as a company, as Microsoft, into words that people can clearly understand. And so when it comes to developers, we look at developer velocity in terms of how much are or how quickly are developers learning, how quickly are developers moving in this ever-changing world. And there are three key bits to developer velocity. Collaboration. I'm pretty sure if you've ever written code, you'll know it's much easier if there are more of you, right? It's much easier to collaborate. It's much easier to work as a team. The second bit is scaling innovation. We want you to go out there and try new things, challenge yourself, try your hand at building something. And when it comes to building, it's also building productively. If you've worked on a project for a while, you'll know how easy it is to lose track of key goals within your project, how easy it is to lose track of metrics within your project, how easy it is if you're working as a team to not know who's supposed to be doing what where. And all that is breaking down your productivity. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so let's talk a bit about the evolution of software development. Where did all this come from, right? And back in the day, it was purely developers trying out their hands at things. When you start as a software developer, it's you alone. And back in the days of ticker tape computers, where you literally had to run paper through a machine for it to understand, most of the times you'd be sitting there working on it solo and trying to figure out. And so when we talk about building productively all the way to the end goal, it's about empowering you as an individual developer. But then you have this whole new other world when you collaborate with people. Sometimes it's people you're seated next to, and those are your development teams, right? That's when you sit as a group and you're like, hey, guess what? We're going to build a piece of software that changes the world, right? You need to be able to collaborate. And another big area is, what if you step beyond the team and look at a global audience? And this is what open source development really is about. Open source development is about multiple people coming together and all these people working on projects and allowing global level collaboration. And here's the best part: you can actually go in and contribute to an open source repository today if you wanted to. So there's a lot of room there for collaboration. And all that is tied into DevOps. So what's DevOps? And this is a word I'd love you to keep. If you are going into software and writing code, please remember the word DevOps. It's going to save you a lot of agony in the coming years, if not now, right? And so DevOps, basically at its core, is the fusion of people, products, and processes to deliver software. Think of it this way: if we are working on a project together, right? You, me, some people out there in the world, we need to find a way to share our code. We need to find a way to determine our metrics and say, you're supposed to deliver this code in 1 month. How do you measure that? We need to be able to make sure changes are tracked such that when I edit your code, nothing breaks. Or when you edit code, I can easily know you changed it here and this is what happened. And DevOps is a whole space in and of itself. And when we'll be talking about opportunities in tech, we'll touch a bit on the DevOps space because there is a role such as DevOps engineers. These are software engineers who specialize in helping their teams drive proper and productive software development processes. And when it comes to scaling innovation, two key things here. One is, of course, cloud computing, which we'll be touching on today. I believe everybody here should have a basic idea of what the cloud is, right? It's basically using someone at its most common core, right? It's using someone else's computer jointly, right? So you are using Microsoft's computer for something. If you're saving documents online on OneDrive, I'm using it. Velda is using it. Stephanie is using it. We all using it. And that's the cloud. Voila, done. Introduction to Cloud 101 complete. And you can go pass your exams if you're doing any. But at the end of the day, cloud computing has probably changed the computing world in its most fundamental core. It's about bringing and reducing resources. Imagine if each and every one of us who's ever built a website needed to have a server under our beds just to host that website. The cloud changes all that. Being able to use massive compute resources, and we'll talk a bit about artificial intelligence. You need massive compute skill. In fact, it's so massive at this point that silicon manufacturers and chip manufacturers are trying to find new ways of building chips that work, because we are really at the beginning of a revolution. And last but not least is low code extensibility. Once you've built something, it should be easy to let it be extended using as minimal code as possible. In fact, we've gone to the point where there are what we call no code solutions. And these are solutions where you can actually build out an entire program without writing a single line of code. You might be thinking, hey, wait, what does that mean for me as a developer? Well, guess what? Someone has to build the frameworks that do that. And most of these solutions are for the citizen developer. Therefore, the guy who needs an application to send out surveys. Therefore, that person who needs to automate a small, tiny process. They don't need to go in and call in a huge development team when they can easily hop in and actually get that to be built. Cool. So I love Visual Studio Code. I'm not going to talk about Visual Studio. If you have not installed Visual Studio Code, I don't know what you're doing. Please do go and check it out. But I am going to talk a bit about collaboration, and this is very key. As some of you know, Microsoft acquired GitHub, I think last year. Was it last year or the year before? I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the year before. I could be wrong on that. And GitHub has today the largest developer community on the planet, with over 36 million developers there. So if you are not on GitHub, please do go check it out. It's where all the largest repositories of code are, open source repositories. You can easily host your code there as well. And it makes collaboration super easy. I want to talk about the enterprise features of this. I don't want to dive too deep into that. But let's just say, when you are able to have that much code and know the people who are contributing, it's very easy to identify security issues, right? So think about it this way. Maybe you're using a framework. Maybe you're using Express if you're writing on Node.js. Maybe you're using Laravel if you're on PHP, right? You've written your application, you've released your code. But then 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, 5 months later, when you've already forgotten about the project, Taylor Otwell tells you, oh yeah, also Taylor Otwell is the founder of Laravel. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, there was a security vulnerability on this library and we needed to fix it and patch it. You would want that to be pushed into your code. You would want your code to be secure, because right now you might be building projects for yourself, but you want to also be building projects for clients, and you also want them to be secure. So it's very nice to use tools that enable and protect your security, like GitHub. Okay, and now we're going to dive a bit into the cloud, right? And let's talk a bit about Azure. So, what is Azure? Oof, that's a tough one. That's a very difficult one to answer. So, think of Azure as Microsoft's cloud platform. An easy comparison would be something like AWS, GCP, Azure. Those are the three big cloud providers. Some of you might say, hey, what about Alibaba and the rest? Yes, they're all cloud providers. DigitalOcean, slightly different because they look at VMs and things like that. So, Microsoft Azure is Microsoft's cloud service, and it's a complete end-to-end cloud service. In fact, this is probably the simplest this slide could be. And trust you me, we've tried different versions of it. There are just too many services to fit in here. I think there are actually more than 3,000 different services as we speak. And the best part is, these are services that are both built by Microsoft and those that are built by third parties. And I'll dive into a demo and show you guys and actually walk you through a bit of Azure. And if you wanted to classify Azure, we look at it in 4 key ways. Number one, and let's start with the most familiar, is what we call serverless. Basically, it's platform as a service. And platform as a service, as you know, is you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You want a website, you push your code, you get it done. You want to build a mobile app and you need a backend, you push your code and you get it done. And of course, under serverless, I think the most common one of our largest areas is actually the web, right? Whereby you have people going in, building applications, websites mainly, API endpoints, and things like that. You have people also going in to manage the API endpoints with tools like API management, which I see is not actually on the list, and that breaks my heart. You can also go beyond and talk about things like containers, and understand and go into microservices, which is also a very interesting space. If you're a young developer looking to actually skip one huge level of development, please do go check out containers. If you're already using containers, amazing. Now go check out containers on Azure because it's containers on steroids. So, what are containers? Because I've hyped them so much. Think of it this way, and so containers are basically tiny little computers or self-contained, almost I don't say even virtual machines, just self-contained compute spaces that perform or that allow you to run a single program. And allow me to make sense of all this. And I'll start with probably the first implementation of containers was actually by, wait for it, Netflix. Yes, Netflix quite literally changed the world of computing by introducing microservices. So here's what they did. They realized, hey, streaming is super heavy, it should run by itself. A user logging in and a user streaming a video are two different things. A user logging in, a user changing their profile, and a user streaming their video are three completely different things. Now, developer A might build your login system. Developer B might build your profile and payment. Let's actually go with the payment system. And developer C might be building your streaming system. And in most cases, all developers come with a preference of language. So I'm really good at PHP. Well, am I really good at PHP? I don't think I'm really good at PHP, but PHP is my favorite. I'll easily default to PHP. I'm familiar with Python, C Sharp, and the rest, but it's my default. I can write you the best and fastest code there. You might be good at C++ or C Sharp. Someone else might be really, really amazing at Python. And so, why limit these guys? And so, what they did is they broke each service into its own module. And they said, if you want to build, let's say, your login system, as an example, we're going to build that on PHP. The payment system, we're going to use .NET. The streaming system, we're going to use Python. And these are just random examples. And so each of these are different technology stacks. And so if you're running PHP, you definitely need a server. Most likely you're going to do Apache or Nginx. And of course, that's going to be separate from a .NET server that's running something like IIS, right? And so each of these environments are different. But how do you bring them together? You take this tiny microservice that you have just built. Remember, it's a microservice. It's doing one thing. And you put it in a box. And it communicates via an API to every other box in your system. And so that box is, ta-da, a container. And that's where the name comes from. Super fast, super simple, super easy. And as you can see, it makes development work easy. You bring your own language. And so, if you're interested in the realm of containers, there's a lot more information. I see someone's commented with Docker. Very, very good example. Yes. Docker, we could go into Docker, we could go into Kubernetes if you're looking at container orchestration, which is also another whole field around how do you get all these containers to work together. Okay, there's also the space around databases, right? And I love databases because at the end of the day, it's where you're going to store your data, and you can get really, really deep with databases. And of course, databases will come in various forms. You have your open source databases, MySQL, Postgres. Those are mainly relational databases. You also have NoSQL databases. And you could go Cosmos DB, which I'll touch on in a bit. You could go MongoDB, and all that is available on Azure. In fact, you know what? Let's not talk about it. Let me just show you what all this is about. So First things first. So you're sitting there wondering, where do I start? That's always a simple one. Maybe you're wondering, hey, I want to check these things out before I actually commit. So you could go to azure.com stroke free, and I hope I have the link right. Yes, there you go. So if you go to azure.com stroke free, you get a number of free Azure services. So and some of these will always be free. So for the first month, you get $200 to mess around with and play around with. So please, please, please feel free to go in and do that. And you also now get a number of services for free for 12 months. And then we also have a bunch of free services that run permanently. I think you can hold up to, is it 5 websites or 10 websites for free forever? So it's super easy, super simple to use. Of course, there are limits. We're not saying, hey, you can just go and run around rampant on Azure. And yeah, but if you're wondering, where do I start? Where do I go? First things first, please do go check out azure.com stroke free. Lots of free stuff there for you to actually go in and use. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to sign into the portal over here. And I'm going to use this account. And yeah, so one of these should work. There we go. Let's use the portal. Okay, so this is the Azure portal, highly customizable. I keep mine very busy. As you can see, I have lots of stuff up and running. I'm going to zoom in a little so that you can see it a bit better. But I'll show you, what I want to actually show you are some of the resources and some of the services. And everything that you've seen on that slide is actually available here. And I'll break down some of the ones that feel a bit fluffy or doesn't make sense, right? So compute is basically anything to do with virtual machines or instances where you need a processor, some RAM, and something to put it all together, right? So virtual machines are the classic item of the cloud. This is where we all started. You're like, hey, how do I get to use someone else's machine? Well, you create a virtual machine. And at its core, that's what the cloud is. It's just a huge bunch of virtual machines running on someone else's computer. And you virtualize on top of that, and you abstract on top of that to put in containers. It gets crazy nowadays. I won't dive into every single item. I'll just touch on what some of the ones that I think are really super cool and really, really amazing, and the ones that really get me excited. So, one is I should pass here without talking a bit about Kubernetes services. We've talked a bit about containers, and Kubernetes basically allows you to manage containers and go in and do that. In fact, I'll show you something super interesting as we continue. So, what are app services? App services are probably the most common place most of us will go. So this is basically platform as a service. And the reason why I think some of this stuff is super, super exciting is not only can you come in and push code if you're a developer, but if you do have a container, you can actually come in and run a Docker container directly, which I think is pretty awesome. So, to the person who mentioned Docker, there you go. Very simple way of moving your Docker containers into the cloud. Super fast and super easy. I won't go step by step into how you create all this, but I'll just walk you through very quickly. Resource groups are basically just a logical way of putting resources together. I'm going to create a new one for this conference, and I'm going to call it She Code. There we go. Okay. Um, Web app name, creative names, things like tester, and then you throw in a bunch of numbers. That way, you will never forget the website you built. You can either publish code or a Docker container, as I mentioned. Let's go with code for a bit. A runtime stack. Now, this is something very interesting. You have Linux and Windows. So please, please do notice. One is you're not limited. We're not saying, hey, we're Microsoft, you must use Windows and you only get to use Windows. No, no, no. You can use Linux if you so wish. In fact, I love Linux a lot more as a development environment than I love Windows. And so if I was to do a PHP application, maybe I want to do PHP 7.4, I'll put it on Linux. You'll notice you also can go in and choose the language that you want. You want to do Java. Maybe you're more comfortable with that. You want to do .NET. Or maybe you are one of those who are trying to push the boundaries. We just released .NET 5. Please do go check that out. That's pretty awesome. You can actually go in and run your new .NET 5 apps there. Maybe you're into the Python space. It's what all the young people are doing nowadays, right? Everybody's into Python. And so you're not left behind. You do have Python. In fact, it's first party there. You can really go in and do a lot of stuff there. Ruby, if that's your thing. And of course, how could we forget our Node people, our JavaScript people? Long live Express. And you can easily go in, choose your Node version, and go in and actually build something. I'm going to go with PHP. In fact, I'm going to do Linux, Windows. Fun fact, Linux is actually cheaper, which is amazing, right? I know. Wow. B is you can choose your region. So we're running this conference out of Kenya, right? And here's a funny thing most people don't know. We actually have data centers in South Africa. So if you're building an application and you want it to be really fast, super fast, please choose an area that's really close to you. We've seen some instances where people don't actually change their region, and so you find yourself somewhere in central US. I mean, come on, seriously. Just change your location. It makes your applications much faster. And last but not least is, of course, the app service plan. This is basically how much are you going to pay for this. Since you guys are joining in on the demo, you have $200 for free, so you don't need to worry about costs. But if you're starting off, check this out. The first B1 core for Linux is free for the first 30 days. Of course, I'm taking that. I ain't paying a cent on this thing. Anyway, so you can go in, select your Linux core, or select whatever you're using. And this is where you get some of the interesting features of the cloud. And I'm actually going to show you some interesting things. So number one, so let me go into Premium because it's going to show you some of the extra features you get. Auto scale. I'm going to give a very Kenyan example, but I'll sort of break it down for our international audience as well. Number one, of course, I don't know how many times we've gone to some government website that provides loans for universities, or that government website when you need to file your taxes and it's nearly tax season. For those of us who are paying tax, I hope you filled out. I hope you've gone and done your taxes. And suddenly, around that time of the year, the entire website is hit by a couple 100,000 people, and what happens? It goes down, right? You go on, it's just there loading for hours and hours and hours and hours. And with something as simple as auto scale, whereby you basically tell it based on the load or based on CPU usage, based on RAM and memory usage, I would like you to create a new instance, and it automatically load balances for you. Simple things like that come already intrinsic into the system. Things like staging slots. This is actually pretty amazing for developers to use in testing and deployment. So let's say you have a pipeline whenever you're building code. In fact, I'd recommend, and this is why DevOps is super critical, is go in, you build an app. You don't just release it. Have a testing environment. And after testing, you could actually have up to 20 staging slots. You could have testing 1, testing 2, QA for quality assurance and just double checking things. You could have a pre-deployment and then finally a production slot, and that's the main one that people are accessing. And you can easily swap between them at the snap of a finger. So if you release a new feature, you don't have to put that. You see that nice thing people put on the website under construction. You actually don't need that. You actually go in, have it ready, and once you're ready to swap at the click of a button, you just swap the two. Notice you get a traffic manager already input by default. You can go in and put in your custom domains. Like I said, lots of features that come in and different. If you're using Windows, you do get still a lot of the same features. And so you're actually able to go in and do a lot when it comes to this stuff. And I think that's it. I'm just going to review and create because I really don't mind. There we go. Reviewing, creating. You can add tags, monitoring, and other things, but I won't dive a lot into that. But for most of you, if you're more interested on the website creation and management, this is probably what you'll be using a lot more. So while that's deploying, Let's go back to all services. Just it's actually deploying. So let's go back to all services. Networking, everything you'd need, and from firewall management, firewall policies, public IP addresses. Some companies do need this. I don't. You do get a number of free ones with Azure, by the way. I don't remember the number, but that's available there. Storage. So we split databases and storage because you tend to store two different things. Databases are more focused on data and moving data around. Oh, it's actually finished. But when you talk about storage, you could be storing massive amounts of data where you need something like a data lake, where you're storing even petabytes of data. Imagine if you are doing research, and this is actually used a lot for research on something like cancer, and you need to store massive amounts of images, massive amounts of documents, actual raw data. We do also have people who use this for files. You want to have a place where you can back up files and have it run as a net drive. Very easily doable. We've talked a bit about the web. I won't dive into all the nice little bits and pieces for my Java people. Where are my Java people? Yay. You do have Azure Spring Cloud, so please do go check that out. Um, you can also do mobile when it comes to, and I won't touch a bit on Power Platform. Like I said, we do have a lot of things we could talk about. I want to talk a bit about databases because we do have some new, and well, they're not new now. They've been here for nearly 3-4 years, but people asked for them and now they're here. So you can actually do MySQL as platform as a service, meaning you don't need to deploy it into a virtual machine. You actually just fire it up and run it. The same is true for MariaDB and Postgres. Of course, you still have SQL and SQL Server, which are Microsoft first party, but you do have a very good mix of stuff that people use out there, and also a bit of Microsoft stuff as well. So you're not limited in terms of what you need or what you want to do. You can also build Hadoop clusters here. You can use things like Azure Databricks. And I really do apologize, but 30 minutes is actually not enough to dive into every single thing that we have and that we offer. In case you are a Python fan and you are looking at building machine learning algorithms and trying out your hand at machine learning, you do have machine learning VMs here as well. And I'll also share where you can go and learn all these things in a sec. So don't worry about that. I got you. Um, if you're also into the Internet of Things, so for those of you who are not familiar with the Internet of Things, you should be. It's pretty amazing space. It's basically about connecting devices and having them communicate both with each other and with a central hub and managing them. A very good example, probably a terrible example to give, but a good example is how would you manage traffic lights across a city? How do you know which one is on, which one is off, which one is working, which one needs an update? In fact, here's another example. If you are a telecommunications company, how do you manage, how should I call it? How do you manage all the masts that you have? Or maybe you're just like me and you want to do fancy stuff with your lights. So, for example, if you want to go in and connect your PC to your lights, you do have the capability to do all that. But with the IoT Hub, you're actually able to not only connect devices, manage them remotely, push updates to every single IoT device. And I think I have a Raspberry Pi somewhere back there, but unfortunately can't do a demo on this today. And actually manage that entire IoT space, from something as simple as managing lights in a room to something as complex as managing, and I'll give a very good example of one of our customers, Mcopper, where they are managing solar panels and being able to communicate with each and every single device. Now, if you have multiple devices, and now this is why you guys are developers, right? It's about coming up with unique and creative solutions. Think about this. If you have solar panels, right, and you have a device that tells you how much voltage every battery is getting, that means with a bit of machine learning, you can actually tell if a battery is about to fail a couple of months before it fails. And with that, you're actually able to go and replace a customer's battery before it actually completely breaks down, which not only saves you as a company the agony of having to deal with a very angry customer who's like, you guys are selling me terrible batteries, but you're actually able to go in and build an amazing relationship with them, right? I mean, simple small things as to how you can bring in each and every one of these solutions. I won't dive into all the rest. As you can see, there are quite a number, from things around mixed reality and being able to build VR, AR kind of applications, to integration, bringing multiple pieces of technology together, to DevOps, which is, like I've said, DevOps. Please go check out DevOps. It's amazing. To being able to migrate your data across things, to being also able to go in and monitor them. But this isn't to say there aren't any third-party applications. So here's a very good example. Maybe I wanted a WordPress website, right? So if I was to come in here, you'll notice Azure has a marketplace, meaning actually we have a ton. Actually, I should just show this. We do have a ton of providers providing multiple services, third-party services. We have Red Hat Linux in here. We have, sorry, I'm looking for one that's CDS. We have SAP on Azure. We have Oracle on Azure. You can literally come in and look for a third-party service and actually use it here. A good example might be Citrix, and it actually auto-completes that for me and gives me a very good example. There are 4 pages of various Citrix applications that are available here. Maybe I'm looking at blockchain. Maybe I want to run something on the Ethereum chain. Sorry, I need to remove that just to show that, okay? And I can go in and look at various service providers and even get a local service provider if I needed to do that. So yeah, Azure is a very busy, very full, and a very unique space. There's a lot of things happening if you are a developer. So please do go check it out. It's amazing. And so, for example, if you wanted your WordPress website, because I know back in the day, this is all we used to do was go in, launch a WordPress page, and start editing the PHP back there. You can go in and do that. How do you want it? Do you want plain WordPress? Do you want WordPress on Linux? Do you want WordPress that's on Open Lightspeed? Do you want it with Plesk? Do you want it certified by Bitnami? Do you want a WordPress server? You have choices on choices on choices, and that's just one example. So please feel free to explore. Feel free to check out some of the services. And if there's a favorite service that you have, go in, try it out, mess around, do something with it. Because all the information is out there, and all you need to do is actually go in and click a button. And if there are any questions, please do keep them coming in chat. And we are going to talk a bit about opportunities in tech in a minute. So I wanted to actually show you this before I switch back out to that. So we deployed our website. We didn't come back to it. I'm sorry, website. We shouldn't have forgotten you. But here we are. And simple, voila, it works. There you go. And if I wanted to push code into it, I could actually hop into my deployment center and decide, do I want to push code via FTP, via Git? Do I want to? So you actually have everything that you'd need right here. And so I can come in, I can select where I want my source code from, even Dropbox, if you have your code in Dropbox. So you can easily go in, you can pull it from FTPS in case you wanted to do FTP stuff. So lots of options, guys. And I'd like to see you guys come in, build something, mess around. I won't go into each and every one of these. We could have a separate session around that. But I wanted to leave you with a general idea of what Azure is and what Azure is capable of. And we are barely scratching the surface. So that was like sort of a 30-minute overview of some of the amazing things that you can do with this. And as always, please do keep your questions coming. And I'll now talk a bit about where you can go to learn some of this stuff. And then we'll talk about opportunities in tech. So where can you go and learn this stuff? Very simple place to start is Microsoft Learn. And sorry, I actually hopped all the way to something else. But Here you go. And I'm just going to sign out for dramatic effect. Ooh, I signed out. Oh, look at that. That looks good. Anyway, so what is Microsoft Learn? Microsoft Learn is our hub for everything. Our documentation is here, our training material is here, every single thing you'd like to learn. And here's the best part, in exercises and learning paths, in some of those learning paths, you do get actual sandboxes for you to go in and actually do the steps that they are walking you through. And it's not video heavy, it's actually more on the text side. So you're actually able to do this on your phone, go in, figure out a path, prepare for certification if that's something you're interested in, figure out what exactly do you want to learn. And we have all our products here, from Azure to GitHub to Dynamics, anything that you want to learn. And for example, here's a very good example. Do you want to master Azure from the basics? Maybe that's where you want to do. Maybe you want to get certified. You do have places you can actually go in and figure out which certification do I want to do. And so if you are completely new to Azure, you are a total newbie, that's very fine, actually. Guess what? This is the place to start. Start with the basics. Go in, mess around, understand what's all this about. And you're actually able to go in and walk through, do actual exercises. And for example, here we go, exercise. Create a website hosted on Azure. And as you can see, you get a sandbox and you don't pay a cent for that stuff. So you can easily go in, mess around, and build things. And I think that's a really awesome way of learning. You can go in and get hands on instead of having a guy like this guy over here on your screen telling you how these things are done. Go in and get your hands dirty, build something. And I think that's what makes it awesome. Okay, I will pause there and have a sip of water, and I'll ask Velda and Stephanie, are there any questions? And yeah, so please fire away, ask away.
Yes, I'm really intrigued about Azure. I haven't used it yet, but probably after this session, I'm going to be using it. So, my question is, what is unique about Microsoft Azure that stand out to us as developers? Like, what makes me use Azure and not something else? So, yes.
That's a tough question. Oh my goodness. Do I have an actual answer? So I'm looking for like the perfect answer that won't that actually makes sense. I want to talk about pricing. At this point, fun fact, actually most cloud pricing is generally almost the same, which is amazing. So I'd say the first one is closeness to you. You have a data center literally with you on the continent. And I think we might be the only ones at this point who have one. I do know one of our competitors is building one, but that's point A. Point B is integration. If you already are running existing services, it's super easy to integrate, super easy to move your stuff in, and that makes it a very, very viable space for you to explore. C is, of course, richness of services. There are quite a number of services that you can go in and use. Every cloud provider approaches every how they tackle these services differently, and so that's more of a personal thing. As a developer, you might find that cloud provider X does or something that you feel they do better than we do as Microsoft, and that's very okay from my perspective as a developer. But as my perspective as a Microsoft employee, why aren't you using Azure? Why not? Anyway, um, but I would say just having that right mix of resources, the right mix of tools, the amazing teams out there that, or rather in here in Microsoft, that are actually building and extending, and the richness of the documentation. It's actually all these various bits, pieces, and factors brought together, such that the moment I hop onto Azure and I see something new, let's say the app service editor as an example, and I'm wondering what's that about, I can easily go in, look at documentation, and actually make sense of it. For me, it's about the experience and how easy it is to use some of these things and the documentation that's out there for us to actually go in and do that. To be very honest, back in the day when I was a student, And I looked at Azure was very new back then. There was no documentation, and so to see the company actually turn around and build proper ways for people to understand that stuff makes me really really happy.
Okay, Stephanie, do you have any question you'd like to ask?
No questions, but Lawrence, I'm really enjoying the session. I'm learning a lot. I'm not new to Azure, but there are some services that I've never like picked on. But now it's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
So there's a
Okay.
question from the double. He's asking what are Azure solutions for edge programming?
Ooh, by edge programming, do you mean programming for the edge? So in terms of IoT devices and devices that may be intermittently connected. If that's the case, then you're looking at the IoT Hub and you're looking at Azure Stack as an example. Here it is. And what this allows you to do is actually uh, write code for devices that may disconnect at a certain point. And so you're actually able to not only push updates, manage them. I love Azure Stack mainly because it allows you to completely have a unique and completely removed Azure environment that is completely separate. But once it connects to the internet, it's actually able to share data back. And a very good example, for example, might be cruise ships that are completely away in the middle of the ocean, and suddenly you have no internet, but you need to actually run the devices that are running within your ship, and you still need a UI that makes sense and be able to manage that. So I hope that answers your question. I hope I got the edge programming bit right because I'm getting it from an edge devices kind of perspective. So yeah. Thank you. I hope you're all enjoying the session. I know it's evening, and I'm trying to make sure that your time is spent valuably. And yes,
Yeah.
so thank you for making it and thank you for attending. Uh, okay, so let's pivot. This is a hard pivot. We are talking about tech, and now we're going to talk about jobs and careers. Oh my goodness. Um, and this part of there are no slides. There's only one slide for this, by the way, and I need to look for it. Give me 1 second. I already have it here, and I'm just going to share that particular slide because it's something that I believe is truly fundamental. So here we go, from current slide. Okay, voila. So this is part of, and I probably should talk a bit about my story in tech and a bit of that, but I think I'll start here. There are three key things that I believe are critical to being successful in any field. There's education, exposure, and experience, and you need a good mix of these three. Education is the learning, right? It's what we do in school, it's what we do on the job. Most of the times we are learning, we are growing, we're trying to build something, and it's probably the part that we focus on the most. It's where we spend most of our time. We get our degrees, we get our certifications, we get our papers, and we keep diving deeper into that. But education by itself is amazing, but without exposure and experience, it gets sort of left behind. What is experience? I think experience is pretty obvious, right? It's getting your hands dirty, it's going in and actually putting your education to good use, right? You take what you've learned and you build something with it. Because what's the use of sitting down and learning something if you're not able to actually go in and use it and implement something and challenge yourself to build something? So, education by itself, good to have. Meh. Experience by itself, you might be doing something, but if you don't know the right way of doing it, that's a big problem in and of itself because you might be doing it in a very suboptimal way. And last but not least, and this is the one that gets the least amount of traction for most of us, is exposure. It's being able to go out there and learn new things, expose yourself to a whole new field of doing things, of working, of people, cultures, new ways of thinking. And the reason exposure is super critical is exposure shows you what is out there. And we rarely focus on exposure because it's very, very easy to be locked in this box, right? You've I'll give you my example, right? Studied in JQuat, right? First job was with my friends from JQuat. Second job was with my friends from JQuat. And we, most of it was work from home. We were based in Georgia. It was fun. But that didn't give me the kind of exposure I needed to know, hey, how do developers at, let's say, a multinational company do it? So the things we are learning were the things we'd learn from YouTube, and that's okay. That's really, really fine. But there's a limit to how much information you can gain through that. And for me, probably one of the biggest areas of exposure was meeting various teams, going out there and doing hackathons. I still think one of the most transformational experiences I ever had as a developer. And actually, here's a funny story. Yeah. So this is me in campus, of course, as you can tell. I thought I was a know-it-all. I was like, yeah, I just learned CSS, by the way. I was really good at CSS back then. So I just learned CSS. I was good at PHP. I think Laravel 3 was the hot thing back then. And we go for a hackathon, right? I've paid. This was a paid hackathon. This was a prestigious event, right? And we were like, we are going here to rock it. We are going here to take the first prize money and walk home like ballers. Of course, I was also broke in campus, so I needed that prize money. So this was an investment, and I was like 3,000 Kenya shillings, and I expect to walk out of here with that 50K. So let's see if we're going to make that happen. And so I remember walking in and sitting down, and food was amazing, etc., etc. And then guys stood up to actually talk about their ideas and how they were going to implement them. And my jaw hit the floor. I was stunned. Have you ever gotten that moment when you realize, holy crap, I am definitely not the smartest person in this room. I am not even the top 50%. I am definitely ranking at the low 20s here. And I am definitely not going to run my mouth. I am going to keep quiet and listen. And and that was my experience then. To be very, very honest, best 3,000 shillings I ever spent in my life. And I can say that with no regrets. I'm not saying go spend money at hackathons, but I am saying please, please, please do take the leap to go out there and try something. Because if you don't, you will forever be the biggest fish in your little pool. And until you realize there are bigger pools out there, people who are doing amazing things, challenging problems that we would never have thought were actually possible to be challenged. That's when you begin to realize, hey, there are other ways of doing this. There are ways of being a developer that transcend beyond what we expect in the day-to-day kind of perspective. And so exposure is super critical. A lot of us enjoy, it's okay. There's a reason it's called the comfort zone. We enjoy the comfort zone because it's where we are good. It's what we do on the day-to-day. But every once in a while, take that wild dive, go try something new. Of course, these decisions have to be made carefully, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'll give you two good examples. Again, I'll just pull straight from my career as a very good example. I joined Microsoft as an intern 6 7 years ago, sometime X number of 6 7 years ago. And I remember I remember I went in for the interviews. And I, of course, like I told you, after that hackathon, I was like a hackathon. I had hackathon mania. I was in every single hackathon that Nairobi did, from I remember the random hacks of kindness to all the stuff we used to do at the iHub. It was a crazy time. I loved it. So I had on my resume quite a number of hackathons and solutions that we had built. And the interviewer at that time, she looked at that and she was like, "Yeah, you're a developer through and through, and that's okay." But she said, "The roles that we have are sales roles. This is a sales position, and you've done tech, like you're a developer. Will you take it?" And it's one of those times where you actually have to make a spot decision. And in my head, I remember at that point I was thinking, hey, wait, this is Microsoft, right? This is probably one of the companies I've wanted to work for a very, very long time. I'd like to know what's out there. This is what I want, but it's not what I want, right? I want to come in as a developer and write code and build amazing things and be like, rock star developer. right? And I have a small guitar back there to actually prove it. You can't see it, but anyway. So that's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to do, and there was the opportunity was there. I was told, hey, this is a sales role, and we think you might be okay at it, but you have to make the call. And so I made the call. I said, you know what, I am going to do a year of sales, and this is coming from. I know right now it sounds like, hey, this guy could sell ice to Eskimos or sand to Tuaregs in the deserts. But no, I'm an introvert through and through. And back then, I was just from campus. My lord, I would rather have sat in a very, very dark corner, and I still do, and just write code all day. And it was not my thing. But to be very honest, that 1 year of running and trying to do something completely new, completely different to what I was used to, has been super impactful to my career thus far. It was a sales role, and that means being able, and this is why I love technical sales. And I believe every developer should try at least, even if it's just 2 months of technical sales. It's about understanding the technical bit of what you're selling and being able to translate that into layman's language and share it with a customer and get them excited enough to not only want to know more, but be willing to spend money on it. Sales is an interesting space, and we're talking a bit about careers here. And I'm just going to allow me to digress a bit and talk about sales and why I think people laugh at sales, but I think sales is amazing. Sales is about human psychology. It's about understanding people, but also it's about understanding problems and being able to position a solution in a way that makes sense for them. So I'll give you an example. I don't know how many of us are pre-Facebook generation. I'm pretty sure most of us remember a time before Facebook, right? Or even, here's a better one. Here's an even more complex one. How many of us remember a time before Twitter? If someone came and told you, hey, there's going to be a platform, I'm going to just listen to me. There's this platform we're going to build, right? And you can only post 140 characters. What do you think? I would have thought you mad, right? It wouldn't work. No. But if you think about it, if you think about how to position the problem isn't that the problem isn't anything to do with the 140 characters. The problem is about conciseness and brevity. And so if you pivot that to be, imagine a platform where people actually said what they meant instead of beating around the bush with, I don't know, 5 paragraphs on Facebook, right? You'd want to go in and be like, yeah, I get to put in 5 sentences and people know exactly what I mean. So sales, sorry, I went completely on a tangent there. Let's go back to the original tangent, which was about sales. Sales and technical sales in particular are a very interesting field because it mixes not only your technical knowledge and your knowledge of a product, but also being able to talk to people, listen to people, figure out their problem, and see how does this solution that we've built tie into solving this problem that they have. And I think it's a very underrated space, but not only is it super lucrative, especially within large tech firms, but it's also a good mix of not only building yourself as an individual, because let's be very honest, there are thousands of solutions out there and thousands of companies that need them, but also being able to find new ways of doing it. And for me, coming in and going into sales and figuring out technical sales, and also that's when I threw myself into public speaking, because there was a project Microsoft was running and I was super curious and I was like, I'll do that. And I remember back then I said yes to nearly everything. And voila, 7 years down the line, I can literally do this conference and not feel nervous. Of course, I'm nervous. We're all nervous at the end of the day, but not feel like I'm super worried about a lot of things. And so that level of exposure is critical. It exposed me to also another very big part that a lot of developers don't really understand, which is business. Think about it. Let's just draw a mental map with me, right? And I'm going to use Microsoft because I know Microsoft, and I'll try not to reveal any IP details, but think about it. Microsoft operates in about the globe. That's about 150 countries. How do you ensure that sales that are happening on the ground and feedback from a customer on the ground goes all the way to the right people, not to the top, to the right people. For example, we talk today and you're like, hey, Lawrence, I saw this thing on Azure and it's crap. I don't like this. This could be done better. And here's a suggestion. How do I get that to the engineering team? And how do they figure out that this solution, this suggestion, this piece of feedback is actually profitable to the company? There's a lot of math involved, by the way. It's a super interesting space, but there's also a lot of prediction and figuring out how does money move within a company. I'll give you a very big reason a lot of the companies we start after campus as developers fail. It's because we don't know business. And I'm willing to say that quite honestly. When we leave campus, we really don't understand business. We don't understand people and the importance in the business. We don't understand how the bits and pieces fit together. How do you sell a product? How do you make sure? How do you check your burn rate? How do you make sure you're paying people the right amount? How do you track shares and things like that? That's a whole other space within the tech space that I'd say in Kenya, nobody really talks about the business aspects. And so if you don't want to deal with the business and you want to build a startup, look for a business geek. The same way you are a dev geek and you're into code and all that stuff, look for someone who's deep into business, because there are people like that. And they're also trying to break it into the startup space, but they're not sure how to get in. So collaborate and partner. I have, I think, 3 dead startups under my belt already. And that's just the beginning. Who knows how many more are coming. And those are very good learnings. Learn how a business operates, learn how to manage people, mix that with your tech skills, and you're building something. So let's go back. We were talking about exposure. Another very big thing when it comes to career and career talk and career thoughts is the overlap. So forget this overlap around skill, perspective, insight. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Think about the overlap of your skills. When you sit down and think about the skills, what skills do you bring to the table? I'll give you an example. You can code, yes. And then let me give you an example. I'll use a lot of the examples I'll give are about myself because I know myself. I don't know a lot of people out there. So if you can code, can you explain in a very nice, clear, and concise way what you've done? So that could be either through documentation, that's the easiest way, or it could be through presentation. If you can present, amazing, good. So now not only can you code, but you can present. Next, let's add in another problem. Let's say you wrote code, but that was prescribed. You were told, hey, go write code that does X. But maybe let's flip it around. How good are your problem solving skills? If Lawrence came to you and said, hey, I have an electric vehicle that we are building an IoT system for that should allow me to, I don't know, what's the most amazing thing an electric vehicle can do? Fly to the moon? No, that's not amazing enough. I need something more amazing than that. I need to be able to turn it on with my phone. Nah, we're already doing that. Let's just go with that one. Simple, dumb example. I need to be able to turn it on with my phone, right? I need to be able to turn on my electric car with my phone, or even my basic car. Let's say I have an old car. How do I build the stuff or the technology to actually maybe turn it on with my phone? Well, now you as a developer need to sit and think and be like, these are the devices I need, this is what I'll go for, etc., etc., and then build out the code for that, and then explain your code out, and maybe even present it to investors at a meeting or to a board of management, etc., etc., etc. Those are the skills you're bringing. And so those skills I'm using right now are skills you'll find generally in your day-to-day job. But it could be a whole set of other things. You could be an amazing presenter. You could be someone who really understands people and human psychology. You know how to relate to people. And how do you mix that with your existing tech background? A lot of the careers in tech are not about tech. It's actually about the mix of tech and something else. So I'll give you an example. Mix tech with medicine, and you're going into the bioinformatics space. In some areas, tech will mix it with itself, right? If you're mixing tech and, I don't know, the air industry, you're looking at predictive algorithms, fuel measurements, data. You're looking at how do you manage and analyze all that and bring it together. If you mix tech and media, do I even need to give an example? Look at it. You're already on it. You're on YouTube. That's tech plus media. And that's a whole other set of solutions right there. When you mix, pick any career, pick any path when it comes to careers and mix it with tech, and you have a whole new space that's actually that you get exposed to that completely changes how you view the world. Mix tech with anything and you have a career out of it. Mix tech with tech itself in various aspects, right? Dive deep into artificial intelligence as an example. Now mix AI and medicine, and you could be doing research around cancer and things like that. Mix AI and basically even running that's even tech and education. Do you even need to go into that? And you're talking about how people get educated online and things like that. If you mix tech, things like any aspect of tech with something else, there's always something new that comes with it. And so you may find that one of your skills lies in an area completely removed from technology. Here's a very good example: mix tech and music. And what do you get? Streaming services. I'll give you an example. Oh, some good news. I think Spotify just launched globally. I just saw that somewhere. I don't know if it's true. If it's true, hooray. So now mix tech and music. And now you have products like Spotify, products like YouTube, products where you're actually able to go in, not only get recommended music. How do you think that works? Let's be very honest, because that's code. A developer actually sat down and asked himself, how do I get someone who likes rock to keep listening to rock all day? How do you analyze music? Is it the beats per minute? Is it the sound? How do you analyze sound? Is it the waveform of sound that you break down and run against a machine learning algorithm? Are there tags that we can use and run the machine learning algorithm against that? Or are you using tags, but what if the tags aren't available? Small things like that, right? It doesn't sound like a big problem, but think about it. The reason you'd use service A over service B is because it will feel like service A knows you better, right? It will feel like, hey, whenever I listen to music on this place, they get me. Like I'll listen to a new song and go, yeah, that's my song now. That's my favorite song of the week, and I'll add it. And when I go to service B, I'm like, yeah, I don't listen to this. Just because it's popular doesn't mean I'm in my country, doesn't mean I'm going to listen to it. Just save it, but nah, you guys don't get me. Something like that. Mix tech and video. You have video streaming, which, like I mentioned, Netflix already. So you get the idea. Let me not belabor the point, right? Find where your interests lie. And if you're willing to, put those interests on the line for money, mix that with tech, and you have a career space so wide and so amazing that there's nothing that should limit you. And the only way you can do that, the only way you can figure yourself out, is by actually figuring yourself out. It's by going out there and getting uncomfortable. It's by going out there and getting that exposure. Nowadays, the word exposure is kind of, it has too many meanings. But think of it this way: if you are out there trying something new, something you haven't done before, you are getting the exposure. You are exposing yourself to a whole new set of circumstances and a whole new set of experiences. And sometimes that's all it takes. You get to figure out something new, something that you either like or enjoy or are really, really good at. And so these three things: education, exposure, experience, these three things to me are non negotiable. You need to build the three all throughout your career, all throughout as you move in through tech. The opportunities are massive. Let's start. Let's start from the basics, right? From the hardware point of view, from being able to manage and build silicon chips, put them together, and managing hardware. That's a whole area of technology that even I don't understand. I won't even claim to understand how that stuff works. And then you can go into low level tech like IoT and IoT devices, being able to build devices that can communicate with each other and slowly change the world, right? Africa is massively disconnected, and you live in this continent. Think of all the amazing ways you can actually use the Internet of Things to connect people. We've seen some amazing applications, by the way. And I'll give an example. I think one of the premises of Mawingu, the network of Mawingu, was actually being able to use be able to use TV waves for broadband or for internet, which sounds crazy, right? Every place in Kenya has TV. Trust you me, go get a TV, turn it on, you'll get KBC. And yet, not every place has internet. Think about it. Can we use TV waves to provide internet to the rural population? Actually, yes, you can, but there's a whole other process in there. And so you need a few IoT devices here and there. You need decoders, etc. But that's a whole other interesting space. Imagine what you could do with that across the continent. Of course, again, like I said, there's a tech and there's the business. So you also need to figure out the business side of that as well. And of course, do I need to go into? So we've talked a bit about low level tech, and we can talk now a bit about the tech that most of us are familiar with, mid level, high level tech. We're talking about being able to write code, build websites, build applications. This space is massive. You have a lot of businesses out there that are looking for new solutions, new ways of tackling old problems. Think of it this way: how many of us grew up with technology? Not many of us, right? The technology we knew wasn't mobile phones. Mobile phones are new in this country. Let's be very honest. They're new globally, right? But now you have an entire space that relies on mobile phones. You have an entire space that relies on mobile payments, mobile communication. Right now, more than ever, as much as we are super connected, we're also super disconnected. And there's a massive space there as well. Some of the largest spaces we've seen now in what 5 years ago was future tech, things like artificial intelligence, has become really, really massive. And it sounds like a big, grandiose thing, but machine learning and artificial intelligence are doing some amazing stuff. Think of it this way: any place where you need data to make a decision can be easily converted into a machine learning algorithm. It's that simple. Any banks are using it for credits and credit scoring. Mobile apps are using it also for credit scoring. But think about it this way: your favorite video streaming place, including where you're watching me right now, is using it. It's being used virtually everywhere. If you are receiving data, if you have an organization that's receiving data and needs to make certain decisions, you can easily build solutions for that. Here's a very good example. We have a refugee crisis in this country. Kenya has, I think, the largest refugee camp in the world. Kakuma refugee camp as a very good example. Think about how many data points are not tracked and how hard it is to manage a place like that. Imagine if you are asked to build a working stroke workable solution to actually help the management team there either figure out how are we distributing food, how do we get resources, how do we ensure people are getting access to job opportunities and things like that. We could take it a level higher. In fact, let's even go higher than that. Think about financial markets. I don't know how many of us here are super invested in the recent GameStop shenanigans that were happening on Wall Street and Reddit. It was amazing because half the stuff. Fun fact: most of the trades done on Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange, which are the largest stock exchanges in the world, actually run by AI machines. These are literal bots buying and selling based on whether other bots are buying and selling, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole space around finance and AI that has barely been explored, especially in this country. We are literally a few steps behind, and you can change that into any way you want. Look at the mobile lending sector. Kenya to this day leads the world in mobile lending. We move a ton of money via mobile. We're talking about billions of Kenya shillings per month, if not trillions per year. And this is a massive space that people are slowly trying to figure out. And yeah, so there's a lot of room for innovation and trying new things. And when I was trying to put all this together, I think for me, it boiled down to these three things: is if you can take what you've learned and get your hands dirty and actually build something, if you mix your education and your experience, you get skill. If you can take what you've learned and go out there and try a thing you've never tried before, meet people you've never met before, give yourself the right kind of exposure, that gives you perspective. It gives you a whole new point of view. And if you're able to go out there and try new things and also get your hands dirty, it gives you insight. You're able to see things in a different way and come up with a different set of solutions. And so the opportunities in tech are very wide and very broad. And I am not here to tell you, hey, go be a software engineer for this company, or go do AI, or go do machine learning, etc., etc., etc. There are so many options. I can't start to limit you, but I need you to remember a few key things. Is tech is here to stay. It's an amazing space, and I'm super excited that you're all here for this. And where the world is going, we don't know. Well, I was about to say we don't need roads, and I realized this is Kenya. We still need the roads. But where we're going in the tech space, it's completely undefined. B, nobody has all the answers. A very big thing I see in our local tech space is there's a big assumption that what can be built has been built, and this is not true. There are a lot of solutions out there that companies like Microsoft cannot build. We cannot build for example, an M-Pesa. As Microsoft, we are a global company. We are an American company. Let's start there. So we technically do not know the local problems. We try and solve them as best as we can, but there's a big, big space there. There's also the need to bring already existing solutions to customers who need them. People would generally call that sales. I think of it as an actual problem solving experience in and of itself, where we do need technical expertise. You'd be shocked how many terrible IT implementations of simple things like Exchange and emails exist out there. And I do know some people would be like, damn, IT work sucks. It does. It can get boring. I did it. It can get difficult. But guess what? It also can be super exciting if you feel you believe in process optimization. You want to figure out how do you get people to actually use the tools internally properly. Then there's the whole space of cybersecurity and how do you protect people from hackers out there. All the hackers in the call say hi. Don't say hi. We don't know who's out there. Anyway, so all the hackers on the call, how do you protect people from nefarious actors? How do you protect them from themselves? Also, like I said, there's quite a huge space. Kenya has been hit really hard recently by cybersecurity attacks. And if you're in the know, you're in the know. You know it's really bad. And that's a huge, wide, open space that we don't have enough experts on. We don't have enough local experts. And so we always have to keep bringing people from outside to come and tell us, oh, yeah, fix this, fix that. And that's a huge space, white space that nobody's touching. I haven't even spoken about blockchain. What happens when you mix tech and finance? That's a whole other space in and of itself that demands its own discussion. I have broken a promise. I said we'd have 30 minutes for Q&A. I see we only have 10 left. So I am going to stop talking, take a sip of water, hand it over to Velma and Stephanie. To Velda and Stephanie, and any questions that you guys have on anything tech related, Microsoft related. I'll be happy to answer them. We have 10 minutes. It's heading to 9 p.m. And thank you very much for sticking with us all this time. But we also want to make sure that we finish on time because we started on time as well.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions. Well, first of all, I want to know, like you said, you got into Microsoft through a sales position. Like, what were the factors that led you to accepting the job at that particular point? Because I feel like from an engineering point of view and getting a sales like position is that's like a huge life-changing decision, and making
It
it
is.
and now having to be in this particular position of being the developer audience lead. I think you can say it played out well, but what if it didn't? Like, what were the steps would you take? Like, I don't know. I have like
Okay.
countless questions surrounding this.
Okay.
thing.
Okay, so at that point in time, it was a decision that needed to be made. I needed a job, to be very very honest. I'm not embarrassed to share that I was dead broke, so I was like, okay, fine, it's a good position, I'll take it. But also,
Yeah.
there's another big factor because I did have a dev position offer from another company. Um,
Mm.
it was This is Microsoft, right? This is a company that makes billions of dollars a year, and I barely understand how do they do that. How do you build? Because remember, I have ambitions of building my own companies and having them succeed, and the only way you can learn that is by working at a company that's already doing that, short of going in and reading articles, which is amazing. You can go watch YouTube videos about how to run a company, but actually seeing it, being in there, being part of the machine is also a very good way to figure out how does all this work. So the key decisions for me there were: A, I need a job. B is I need to learn. I need to figure out how all this stuff works. And C, at that point, I was like, it's only for a year. Like, what's the worst that can happen? 7 years later, yeah, it's only for a year. Like, it's only for 1 year. Like, what is it? I don't care about the rest. I'll just do it 1 year, and then I'll go back to company B that had given me an offer, and I'll figure my life out from there. So for me at that point, I was like, there's no loss here for me. If anything, it's a gain. I get to have Microsoft on my CV, and I get to actually learn something new and figure it out. Of course, once I joined, uh, new opportunities came up. There was a huge amount of different teams trying new things, and I said yes to the opportunities. Some of them didn't work out. I remember there was at some point the company reorganized, and we went home. Stuff happens. And I came back as part of the For Africa team because I had done some work alongside those team members. So a lot of it is there were instantaneous decisions. I won't say I had this grand plan. Oh my goodness, I am going to do X, Y, Z, etc. No, a lot of these are decisions made on the fly. For example, this position that I'm in right now didn't exist 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But once it appeared and I understood what it was about, I was like, okay, this is something I could do. And I sat and talked with some of my managers and came in and now took in the role. In a year, maybe 2, 3 years, I'll have to make my next decision. Do I know what I'm going to do? To be very, very honest, no, I have no idea. I have an idea of what I need to learn and what are the experiences I need to have. And I have a general idea of this is the skill I need to build. So, for example, for me right now, one of my biggest focuses is, and that's what I'm actually doing right now, is building and delivering programs. And so that for me is a key skill. Before I feel successful in this role, that is my success criteria. Can I build massive programs and deliver them at scale? Because I want to dedicate my life to empowering the continent. And if I don't have that particular skill, I can as well kiss bye bye to that dream. So it's also about figuring out what do you want to gain, because it's not just about what you do for the company. It's about what the company is also doing for you beyond salaries, and that's actually something super super critical to keep in mind.
Okay. So my second question is, there are graduates graduating every single year despite having COVID and stuff. But you said something about startups when you were beginning and how you didn't get so much exposed to like various things that you needed to learn earlier on. So what advice would you give to graduates who have recently graduated or who are going to graduate and want to go into the startup space?
The startup space is amazing for two key reasons. One, it is probably where you will learn how to collaborate the best. Trust you me, in large organizations, we have buffers, right? I can say, guys, it's 5 p.m., bye bye, I'm going home, I'm out, see you tomorrow. In a startup, it's about being empathetic and understanding people and figuring out, hey, if we don't get this up and running, we're going to lose 10 clients, and that's 30% of our income gone like that. And so in startups, it's very rapid. Startups are an amazing space to learn, but also try and get as much exposure as you can, because startups are great. I'm not saying startups are bad. I'm just saying back in my day, the startups I was working in, some of which were mine, Needed some help. So if you have just graduated and you've gotten a role at a startup, go for it. Try it. Trust you me. You will learn quite a number of things. You will learn what is true teamwork. Trust you me. When you have to deliver a feature in a couple of hours and you have to literally go onto Stack Overflow every 5 minutes, it's a very rapid learning process. I think of startups as a crucible. If you are able to go in and survive working and building at a startup, it says a lot about your resilience. But B is also B, take the time to go out and learn new things. Because another big problem with startups is they ask a lot from you. And that's okay. I'll be very honest. From a startup perspective, I understand. But you also, so you end up being locked in this box of your job, home, home, your job. And you rarely ever have a chance to go out there and learn something new and try something new. And this could be participating at a community event. This could be doing a hackathon. This could be trying a certification. This could be just do something that is not just work. This gives you an edge. This gives you something new to actually go in and do. And if the startup you're working at already offers you the chance to do that, take it and run with it. Like go out there, do something. Yeah.
Okay. So far, these are the main questions I had. Stephanie, do you have any question?
I've seen a couple of questions on YouTube, so I'll just let you address those ones.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, there is one here that
Yes,
says,
please.
before Sheila's question, there's one here from, like, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but how can I check the career opportunities in
At
Microsoft?
Microsoft. So
Yeah.
the number one place for all Microsoft careers is careers.microsoft.com. So just go to that website. All our job openings are there. Here's a fun fact: we do take in student interns as developers. Sorry, students as developer interns. So please do go check out the Africa Development Center. We do have programs running. I should have mentioned that, by the way. We do have a site, an engineering site, actually one here in Nairobi and one in Lagos. So if you're interested in being a developer for Microsoft, that's an amazing place to start. Go in, check it out, apply. All that is always going to be on careers.microsoft.com. Select your location, and then you'll get all the opportunities there. And there are openings for students. And so if you're willing to come in and join the Microsoft team and just do that jump start, we never had this opportunity. This was launched like 2 years ago. So please do it. We need engineers. We need local engineers. We need you guys. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. Please do go check it out. What do you need to prep? You'll find quite an amount of resources there. We really, really recommend double check your basics, know your data structures and algorithms, know your stuff. But you're coming in as a student intern, we're a bit more lenient. We're not expecting you to come in and build magical code, but if you can, we want you. Uh, so this isn't Azure related, but what can I do to combine AI and cybersecurity? Ooh, I'm thinking polymorphic algorithms and the best way to go about cybersecurity certifications. Those are two questions on cybersec. So I don't have a lot of experience in cybersec, to be very, very honest. It's a very interesting space, and I love it. But short of being able to use, why am I forgetting its name now? That Linux distro. I've forgotten that Linux distro. Anyway, short of being able to use tools like those and being able to hack in, I'd say A is, can you combine AI and cybersecurity? Yes. Do I know how? No. I'd give you examples, but I don't think that might be the answer you're looking for. I would say doing things like being able to track attacks across IP ranges, being able to, I'll give you a very good example. That's something we do at Microsoft, is being able to check which emails are infected long before they hit your inbox, and being able to do that in half a second. It's mind-blowingly amazing. Actually, not even half a second, shorter than that. In terms of where to go for cybersecurity certifications, I'm not sure. I'd have to check and get back to you, which I'm happy to do, by the way. I do know we don't have any direct cybersecurity certifications, but there are organizations that do offer that. and I'd recommend going in and actually checking them out. I'll be very honest. I'm not super familiar with the cybersec space. I just know how to go in and use Abel and Cain to use get passwords on Windows XP. That was the last thing I did. I promise. Uh-huh.
So
Please
Pascal
tell
was
me.
actually giving you a comment of amazing talk. Thank you, Lawrence. So
Thank
before you decide on starting to leave this call, I I have
Ask away.
one question. So you talked
Yes.
about education experience that makes skill, and then education plus exposure, which is perspective and then insight. So in this particular argument in education, are you talking about like the basic undergrad degree that we all get, or are you talking about the extra miles that we take to learn new things on our own? Yeah. What are you really talking about when you say education?
Okay, sure. I'm talking about everything virtually. I'm talking about the undergrad degree you get. I'm talking about the certifications that you go in and do that maybe you need for a job. I'm talking about any kind of learning that gives you, that just basically does a plus on your knowledge. Any of that, that's education. But in terms of what should you also focus on, I'll be very honest. The undergrad degrees we do don't prepare us for the market, and that's a bit harsh to say, but it's the truth. as as a survivor of a Kenya university, I can proudly say we were not prepared for the job market. The
Yeah.
skills that are required in the market are a completely different and a completely removed set. The skills are critical. Please do not, I'm not saying don't get a university degree. You need the university degree, trust you me. It helps you understand the space that you're getting into. But it is not everything. You have, let me put it this way, you have to augment that university degree. So it could be deepening your skills yourself. Go in, write code, build something, have projects, attend hackathons, build something, actually get your hands dirty and build something. B, it could be doing certifications. Certifications are do two things. Not only do you learn, but you actually get a piece of paper saying this guy knows or this lady knows what she's talking about, right? Which is a
Yeah.
win-win. You know, Lawrence can come in and say, oh, I know PHP, but there are a few 100,000 PHP developers in this continent. How do you know Lawrence is an actual good PHP developer? And that's what certifications do. They give you and an employer or the company that you're working for certainty. It says this person knows what they're saying. And so when it comes to education, mix it up. Take the degree, but just remember the degree is not everything. It is completely an amazing piece of paper to have, but if you do not augment it, if you do not add on top of it, it just gives you the power to read, as they say during the graduation ceremonies.
So, what is your one final question? What is your view in regards to like having mentors? Did you have a mentor when like going into transitioning from being a student to now being fully employed? Like, do you think it's important to have mentors come in and mentor people before probably they make the transitions or before they even complete their studies? Yeah.
So yes, it's critical to have a mentor. Or if you can't have a mentor, have someone who you can ask open questions. So I'm terrible with mentors because I'm really terrible at interpersonal communication. So I find it very difficult to go in and say, "Hey, you'll be my mentor. Tell me things." That's very difficult for me. However, I do know I love asking questions. I'm super curious, and so I'll say, find your style. It's critical. Let me put it this way: it's critical to have someone who has more knowledge than you, who you can sit down, have conversations with, and ask questions of. I do not throw the tag mentor out there because it does imply a mentor mentee kind of relationship, which can be difficult to maintain if you don't have the either the time or the capability or even the personality for it. But it's very important to know, to just have someone who's been in that market longer, who has more knowledge, who has more experience, who you can go and ask questions from. And for me, that was super critical. Every time before I make transitions, I go and ask those questions, by the way. I have So I do talk to people within Microsoft, people who've been in the industry for long, and I'll shamelessly go and ask, hey, Microsoft is doing this thing. I'm interested. What do you think? You've been around longer. What do you think about this? Or if it's around business, I'll go and talk to, I'll even ask to be linked to someone and tell them, I have this one question on this particular thing and I need your insight. And so I don't end up with a mentor per se, but I end up with a network of people who know things that I don't. And whenever I have a question and I need a clarification, those are the people I go to. That may
Okay.
not work for you. That may or may not work for you. It's completely different for everyone. That's what works for me on a personal level. So if you prefer having a mentor, please do go find someone who you can actually sit down with and have those difficult conversations with. Preferably someone who won't softball and tell you this is red while it's actually blue. But if you can't do that, at least look for a network of people who you can actually go in and ask those tough questions. Ask them about, I don't know, employability in the country, employability in a place like Microsoft. What skills do you need to improve? Even things like pay and pay grades. How much should I be making when I join a company, etc., etc. There's so many questions you can have. The benefit, however, of having a mentor is it's long term. You're actually able to build an actual relationship and you're able to leverage their network. Something which I am terrible at is networking. I'm willing to admit that. And so there's a side effect. There's a bad side effect to that, which is I am losing on some aspects. But yes, I'd recommend having a mentor. Are certifications recognized? Are certifications such as on LinkedIn recognized in a CV? Yes. Yes. If you've done something, please, please put it in your resume. You need to state that, hey, look, I did X, I did the exam and I passed. Or I went in, I learned this, and I got a certificate for doing it. Please put it in. That helps. It really helps someone to know, hey, guess what? I've invested in X or Y. What about machine learning certifications? Yes, and they do exist, and we do have one as Microsoft. So please do go check it out, and there's a lot you can learn there. Machine learning certifications, I would recommend do this for me. So go to Microsoft Learn, click on the certifications tab. So up there, you'll see certifications and just go to overview. And you'll have an overview of all the certifications. And we changed how we do certifications. So now they are role based, meaning you can tie it into your career path. So that if you're looking into data science, you can actually go and do data science and machine learning, data engineering, if you're interested in that, or you could actually go into the developer tracks as well. I don't share my screen because I know I'll go in, and before we know it, it's going to be 10 p.m. And I don't want to keep you guys awake for too long. So, yes, I think I'll take one final question and then we can close if there are any.
So far in the chat section, there is no question, unless Stephanie, you have a question.
Yes, I'd like to close it up with my question, which is
Yes, please.
there are a lot of things going on in tech, there are a lot of upcoming technologies. How do you keep up with all this?
Lots of YouTube videos. That's a very honest answer. Honestly, I subscribe to a lot of tech news channels. Whether it's because remember, if you have a full time job or you're full time studying, you need to get information fast. So you don't have time to sit and analyze every single bit of information. And so there are amazing channels out there that literally break down tech news very quickly. And then once you find a topic you like, you then decide to go down the rabbit hole. So now you start digging deeper. You go onto news websites. So I loved the Robin Hood GME story. It was amazing. And so what started off as a small bit of news has now become this global phenomenon. But I remember tracking it from day one because I was like, that's going to be interesting. And I am on Wall Street Bets. I have actually been on Wall Street Bets for a long time. And so I'm there looking and I'm going like, this is going to be very interesting. And you slowly watch the news change. But I'd recommend if you don't have time, I'd actually shamelessly recommend do YouTube. It's 5 minutes and you get the tech news. There's this amazing channel by Linus Tech Tips. I don't remember what its name is. I don't open my browser. But they have a tech news channel, and every, I think, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you get like all the tech news you need in like 5 minutes. You get to know how's Intel doing, how is AMD beating them, and then you can dive deep into that and see what's the history of Intel. Why are they not going into smaller or the new nanometer, 2 nanometer, 4 nanometer? No, I think they're at 14 nanometer processors, etc., etc., etc. It goes deep, but at the end of the day, easiest thing I'd recommend: get a news bite, get a series. It could be an email, it could be a website. I know there's some amazing tech news websites out there, but what works for me is YouTube, because I'll go to YouTube eventually. So why not go to tech news videos? And they're fun. So you're not watching something boring. Someone actually went in, and they know if you don't watch, it's feedback for them as well. So yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay, so there are no more questions, and I'd like to thank you, Lawrence, for taking your time to have this session with us. I'd also like to thank Stephanie for showing up here too and helping in the Q&A session. So yes, thank you, attendees, for taking also your time to attend this particular session. We couldn't have it if you were not present. So yes, thank you and have a good night. So if you want to reach out to Lawrence, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. I don't think he's active on Twitter, but he can tell us.
Um, I appear on Twitter like once a month, and I'm like, hey, and then I disappear back again. But please, if you do reach out to me on Twitter, I will become active. So why not? It's a good
Yeah.
experiment. I'm willing to try it. Yes.
Yes. So thank you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely, lovely evening. Santini.